It's still in the conversation because of the Satoshi vision narrative, the focus on unbounded on-chain scaling, the remaining community and enterprise development efforts, and the simple fact that any project claiming to restore the original Bitcoin design continues to draw attention among certain groups of holders. If this is useful, hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and leave a comment with your honest take on BSV. I actually read them. Looking at ratings and signals, a lot of the technical scanners and community sentiment have leaned cautious to outright negative for an extended period. You will see a mix of hold and sell readings, especially from tools that track the longer term trend and the position relative to key moving averages. Funding and open interest in the derivatives markets have flipped around, but the short term outlook from pure chart based sources remains defensive until price can reclaim and hold above recent resistance levels with convincing volume. There is more coverage for BSV than for lower ranked names because of its ranking and historical origins, but the consensus from technical and sentiment tools has stayed measured rather than strongly bullish. What's going on with Bitcoin SV right now? The chart has been under pressure for a long stretch. Sell signals keep appearing on the higher time frames, and yet some people still argue this thing is somehow undervalued at these levels. How do those two views even sit together? Let's talk about it. Bitcoin SV is a blockchain that emerged from a 2018 hard fork of Bitcoin Cash, positioning itself as a restoration of the original Bitcoin protocol focused on massive on-chain scalability. It emphasizes large block sizes, low transaction fees, and the ability to handle high volumes of data and payments for enterprise and consumer use cases. BSV is the native token of the network. It currently ranks near the top 100 by market cap with moderate daily volume, and the price has been trading near the levels you are seeing after years of decline from previous cycle highs. That's the classic trap setup. The scaling narrative is real to its supporters, the network continues to operate, but the market keeps assigning it a lower valuation while attention stays elsewhere. Retail often gets caught here, buying the original Satoshi vision will eventually matter argument, while the larger trend remains downward or sideways. Here's the real debate. Is BSV actually undervalued at these levels, or is this a value trap after years of relative underperformance? One side points to the original protocol scaling vision, the large block design for high throughput and low fees, the remaining enterprise and data use case efforts, the distance from previous highs, and the idea that a scalable on-chain Bitcoin alternative could re-rate if capital rotates back into the narrative. They argue that if real usage of the network for data and payments grows, these levels could look reasonable in hindsight. The other side says, look at the chart and the market structure. Many Bitcoin folks that peaked during earlier cycles have struggled to hold value once attention faded. Volume and momentum have been soft for long stretches, exchange support has been uneven, and the market has consistently treated BSV as a lower priority name despite the technical claims. On the technical side, the bigger picture remains a clear long-term downtrend from the much higher levels reached in earlier years. Price has spent extended periods making lower highs and lower lows, with recent action testing support near multi-month levels. Short-term bounces have occurred but have consistently failed to reverse the larger structure. Momentum indicators have been mixed to weak on the higher time frames, often hovering in neutral to oversold territory without producing strong, sustained recoveries. Moving averages on the daily and weekly still lean bearish, and volume has been relatively subdued outside of occasional spikes. Short term, it feels more like a weak consolidation or bounce inside a larger corrective structure than a clean trend reversal. You can argue there is some resilience when price holds the recent lows, but the overall structure still looks heavy. Short term, the picture still looks more consolidative and reactive than impulsive. You need to see stronger volume and a clean break of the recent resistance cluster before the short-term bias flips with any real confidence. Longer term, it comes down to whether Bitcoin SV can convert its original protocol scaling vision into sustained demand and relative outperformance for the BSV token. That's the only path that turns these levels into something more constructive instead of just another extended consolidation or grind lower. Risks are meaningful, volatility is still present. A broader risk of move in crypto or continued rotation away from mid-cap Bitcoin folks can pressure the price further. Downside remains open if the recent support zone breaks and the downtrend simply continues. Retail traders love the long-term Satoshi vision and massive scaling story and end up holding through multi-month or multi-year underperformance. Liquidity is solid relative to pure micro caps, but still thinner than the very top names, so larger moves can still happen quickly. There's also the structural risk that comes with any contested fork. The narrative has to keep generating real adoption and relative demand, or the token simply fades under competition and shifting attention. Bull case versus bear case is fairly clear. Best case, broader market risk appetite returns, the network sees growing real world data and payment usage, the scaling narrative gains traction, and price manages to reclaim key resistance levels and start building a higher base. In that scenario, you could see a meaningful recovery toward previous intermediate highs over a longer horizon. Worst case is the opposite. Volume stays muted relative to peers, relative performance continues to lag, and the downtrend simply grinds lower toward new cycle lows. In that scenario, the undervalued talk just becomes background noise while price continues to underperform. Nobody knows which way this resolves. The chart is still fighting the narrative, the network continues to operate with its large block design, and the market remains selective about which Bitcoin fork stories it rewards. So the real question is simple. Is this the kind of project that can finally break out of its long underperformance and re-rate higher, or are we just watching another established Bitcoin fork settle into a prolonged period of low relative interest while people argue about valuation?